Hola amigos, this is Level 12 and today we are back. I'm not dead. I always or usually take January and February off because I get burnt out during the holiday season. And Hitalia videos will be back. We just gotta go through the Twitter because there's too much stuff to update y'all on at this point. I'm just gonna scroll through the Twitter, but that is not this video. This video is some of my favorite American cartoons because before I got sucked into Netflix and anime, I was really really in love with cartoons. Mostly Cartoon Network, some Nickelodeon shows. Most of this list is Cartoon Network because they had superior cartoons, and I still think that to this day. So these are not in any specific order. However, I did put this one first because it is the most newest one I saw, or at least one I had not watched in my childhood, as I put it. So this show is Over the Garden Wall, and it aired in 2014, which was around the time I was watching Cartoon Network, but I just never remember seeing it. So Over the Garden Wall is a mini-series with 10 episodes, 11 minutes each. It takes you less than 2 hours to get through it, and it's about Wirt and his little brother Greg. I'm pretty sure it's Greg and not George. And they are lost in the forest and they have to get back. And it really, in my opinion, pulls on old style cartoons from the 50s and stuff. I have a bunch of DVDs and VHS tapes of those old cartoons that were the scratch and stretch cartoons. I think that's what they're called. Ones where literally everything was alive and it was all musical based, and it's such a trip, and it felt really nostalgic for me, and I loved the vibe of it. And the first 4 episodes, you're just going through the woods, going to Adelaide's, and then the last 2 minutes of episode 4, everything comes crashing down, and it's so interesting, and the show takes a dark turn after that. But it doesn't lose its childish and whimsical vibe, even when things are deep, dark, and serious. And it's very fun. And I love that Cartoon Network was able to make a show that encapsulated that childhood wonder and the mature kind of mystery of it all. And I think it's a really amazing show. And I will rewatch it again when I finish watching all of the other things I have lined up, because virtual learning has messed with my attention span, and I can now only focus if I do 3 things at once. Thank you, COVID. Anyways, the next show is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it is the only Nickelodeon show on here, even though I do, in my heart, have a special place for the original Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron. They're just not on this list because they don't encompass my maladaptive daydreaming. But Avatar: The Last Airbender, despite what a lot of people will tell me, is not an anime. And for the sole fact it's made by American studios. It draws upon the anime style, and it is very not Eurocentric. And I remember watching Avatar with my sister and enjoying the adventure, enjoying the elemental powers they have. Elemental magic and power systems are my favorite. It's where I came up with my main OC from that I later implemented into Dragon Ball. The fire and the water powers were really interesting to me. Air and earth are cool as well. And to be honest, I'd either be an airbender or a waterbender just because I don't have those aggressive traits that firebenders and earthbenders have. And I really loved Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've watched a few episodes of The Legend of Korra. It's different, it's not my cup of tea, and I really do want to read the comics for Avatar: The Last Airbender. I just love the show so much. I love it so much that I bought the entire DVD set before I knew Netflix was going to get all of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it makes me a little bit upset, but again, my DVD collection, I love just owning the thing, and I love the show so much, and it still is a tearjerker for me. I can still watch it, and it just, I remember when I first watched the last episode, and how, great I felt watching it is peak. This show is another really good show. I think a good cartoon is a show that can hold its child viewers and its older viewers. I think this is a really good show for kids and adults. So next is Adventure Time, and this is actually the show that's taking up most of my time right now, is just watching this. I love Adventure Time so much. I remember when it first aired. That's how much I love this show. I remember when it first aired and watching that first episode, and every week I would watch the new episodes. And this was I did this for years. I think I stopped around season 5 because as I'm going through the episodes, they're becoming less and less clear in my head of which one's popping up. And it's a little sad, to not quite remember the show as clearly as I thought I did. And I most certainly never saw the finale. I know the big part that happens in the finale. Bubbling is canon, I know that. But I just want to relive the adventure because I think Adventure Time has amazing lore. Adventure Time is one of those shows that has such good lore sprinkled throughout, and it is one of my favorite things is the lore between between like the Ice King and Marceline and like the Ooh. I remember around the time the Meow episode came out that I had realized they loved their fans, so I was trying to write in the lore of Ice King and Marceline and like the whole apocalypse thing. I never sent it off, I never finished it, but I remember pretty well that I think I was pretty close with the apocalypse and their relationship. It's all in there somewhere. But I love this show so much because, again, it's another one of those shows that entices both children and adults. More so, like, children, because it does have stupid humor sometimes, but the lore! Love the lore. Next is Codename Kids Next Door. This show was part of the reason I didn't want to grow up because I thought I couldn't be a kid next door. Like, the K&D would kick me out, and this show is like this show utilized the child imagination very well. Like what their weapons were made out of, how they saw adults, how they the delightful children from down the lane were always my favorite villains. Father was one of my favorite villains. I think Father is part of the reason that like dark like humanoid looking monsters like really scare me, like because of, like, I knew he was the worst villain of villains in this show. It's just, I love the K&D so much because it's made almost as if from a child's perspective and how they would see things, and I think that's why I got so wrapped up in it, and I actually believed the K&D was real. I just thought I hadn't been recruited yet, and it never worked, and I'm so sad. Next is Ed, and Eddy, and I love this show so much. There's a YouTube channel that's, like, making little shorts. I think it's called Peach Creek Comics or Peach Creek Shorts, something like that. I'll link it below. I watched it, and I love it. I think it's really cute. But Ed, and Eddy is about Ed, the tall guy, Ed, who's also known as Double D, the one with the sock hat, and Eddy, the one in the yellow shirt, and they just make scams to try and get, like, jawbreakers, and jawbreakers are a real kind of candy. They're very small. You all know what a jawbreaker is. But in this show, they were huge. They were massive. This show, like, the proportions and how the physics worked were always all over the place. And it really showed the adventures of neighborhood cul-de-sac kids and all of that jazz. And my favorite episode had to be the ending movie because it just wrapped up the show so nicely. And it's one of a lot of shows will have really whack endings, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Its ending, while it concluded the series, left a lot of questions unanswered. Over the Garden Wall kind of did the same thing. But Cartoon Network, I feel like, is really good at wrapping up their shows. Like, Adventure Time had a pretty good wrap-up. Codename Kid Next Door had a pretty good wrap-up. And I think Ed, and Eddy also had a pretty good wrap-up. I think it's a really just nice show, and it's whimsical like Adventure Time and K&D, but in a completely different fashion of it's very strange. And this is a show that was made by American Canadian Studios. Don't come at me. I love the show so much. It always puts a smile on my face to see it because the humor is great. The animation is questionable. It's a really great show. And then finally, we have Courage the Cowardly Dog. Courage the Cowardly Dog is part of the reason why I love horror and creepy things so much, because this show is nothing but creepy things happening in the middle of nowhere. And I love it. It also has some pretty interesting lore in it as well. Not as in-depth as Adventure Time, and I can't remember it wrapping up as nicely as some of the previous shows either, but it's just about this dog, and he gets adopted by this woman named Muriel, who's very nice. Her husband, Eustace, is kind of a jerk. I always hated him, so I still hate him so much. Muriel can be annoying in her own way in that she's too nice. But anyways, also this show made me think vinegar was a really, like, sweetener, and then I, like, had vinegar once, and vinegar is, like, salty or acidic. It's very strange, and I do not like it, and I don't know why that was her gimmick, but whatever. But it's just these random strange things that Courage has to save them from. And my favorite villain of the show was the fox guy. I loved that character. He was my favorite villain. I think he was the most reoccurring villain. Like, I'm pretty sure, not including the episode where they had a bunch of villains just show up and it was some, like, bowling match or whatever, I'm pretty sure he showed up the most at around 3 to 4 times. Another favorite villain of mine was the hair trimmer guy, just because of how they switched the perspective of the episode for him to be kind of the main character and not Courage. Anyways, very good show, very interesting, kind of monster of the week show, and again, I love those shows. So that's it for this video. Some honorable mentions are Regular Show. I really liked Regular Show, especially as it grew more of a story throughout. Same thing happened with Adventure Time. As I said, really loved the Very Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron and SpongeBob, of course. Who doesn't like SpongeBob? But that's basically it for this list. Italia videos will be coming back. Just give me some time. Anyways, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more random fandom things. Ciao, chicos.